Classroom Management Part 2: Classroom Interactions and Organising Learning. It's all about interaction. No matter if it's your native language or a second or foreign language, personalised and meaningful interaction is a critical component in achieving success. You learned how successful language learning is driven by the skilled management of meaningful interaction between students in the learning environment. Now, let's focus on types of interaction, how to organise the classroom, and how to group learners to create a learner-centred and interaction-rich learning environment. What interaction patterns can you think of? One example is whole class. In this example, everyone works together, usually at the same time and on the same task, led by the teacher. Pause the video for a moment and make a note of your ideas for the following. Make a list of different interaction patterns, for example, whole class. As a teacher, why would you select each type of interaction? And what are the upsides and downsides of each interaction pattern? When you're ready, click to continue watching. Types of interaction. Compare your ideas with these common interaction patterns. Did you note any others? You'll discuss these in the group discussion later. Common interaction patterns include whole class, everyone together led by the teacher. Teacher and part of the class, for example, smaller groups or teams. Closed pairs, two learners working together. Groups, three or more learners working together. Open pairs, in whole class, teacher asks two learners to interact. Conveyor belt, learners interact in pairs, then move places and work with another learner. Mingling, the whole class stand and interact freely with each other. Types of interaction. Let's explore the following 4 interaction types. Make notes under the headings in your task sheet. As you investigate, make a note of any terminology that you want to check. Write down any questions you have and be ready to discuss with your group later. We're going to investigate whole class, pair work, group work, and individual study. Whole class. When we teach in open class, all the learners are under the direction of the teacher. Everyone is doing the same activity in lockstep, with the same pace and rhythm. Learners contribute and answer questions either together or one by one. It's common to work with the whole class when we are giving task instructions, giving explanations, checking answers, presenting content, and doing class administration or formal testing. From a classroom management perspective, what are some of the upsides and downsides of using whole class work? Let's start with some of the upsides. Whole class reinforces a sense of belonging and fosters a positive group dynamic. Everyone gets the same information at the same time. Everyone moves at the same pace, step by step, so it's useful for classroom management. The teacher has control, which can be more important when we work with larger groups, and especially with younger learners. But there are some disadvantages too. Whole class work can be less memorable. This is especially true when the teacher seems to be over-controlling or continues for too long. It can be less motivating. When the teacher is talking at length and the learners are only expected to watch and listen, they lose interest or can't follow what the teacher is saying. This can be demotivating for learners. And not everyone has the opportunity to express what they want. In whole class, the teacher usually selects learners to contribute while others listen. This can reduce the amount of time learners have to use English in meaningful interaction. Now let's look at pair work. Pair work offers more opportunities for our learners to interact and use English in meaningful communication activities. During pair work, the teacher circulates, monitors, and is actively engaged in the learning. We associate pair work with a more learner-centered approach. Learners can work in pairs to do activities together. For example, complete a task or a worksheet, brainstorm ideas, for discussions, testing each other and during question and answer activities, mini dialogues and role plays, and doing language games and other communication tasks. The age and maturity of our learners is a key factor in our decision to use pair work. Very small children, particularly, need higher levels of teacher support and direction. But pair work has many advantages for the English language classroom. All students are involved. Information can be more memorable. Pair work can help develop learner autonomy. Teachers can direct their attention to weaker learners. It's more relaxed and friendly. And pair work is usually quick and easy to organize. What are some of the disadvantages? For younger learners especially, pair work requires careful management for it to be successful. You may need to train your learners to work in pairs if it's not something they're used to. Pair work can be noisy and less controlled. In large groups, particularly, it can be difficult for teachers to monitor everyone. Some learners don't participate equally, and learners may not like working with a particular partner. Another disadvantage is that one partner may dominate. Our third type of interaction is group work. Group work, like pair work, is associated with a more learner-centered classroom. It is common for learners to sit in table groups. It can lead to more communication and it supports learning independence. The main characteristic of group work is when, usually, 3 to 6 learners work together on a single task. They need to work together to complete the task. The decision to organize group work activities will naturally depend on your teaching context, and group work activities can include brainstorming, generating or creating a mind map, for example, for discussions, question and answer sessions and debates, discovery activities and communicative tasks, for problem-solving activities and mini-projects, and also drama, role-play and dialogue work. As always, there are some disadvantages and advantages. Let's look at some of the advantages first. Group work often means learners are more active and involved. They're more likely to be fully involved and active when they work in smaller groups. They have more autonomy. Group work helps learners learn from each other, which is a very natural way for young learners particularly to learn. It increases opportunities for collaboration, cooperating, and negotiation to achieve a particular learning outcome. It promotes learning autonomy from the teacher, enabling learners to practice skills such as time management, organization, knowing where to get help, self-reliance and perseverance. And it offers variety in terms of task types and interaction patterns. Variety is a major factor in stimulating and maintaining our learners' motivation. As always, there are some disadvantages too. Group work can be noisy. You need to set guidelines and give gentle reminders. Group work is good for some but not for others. Personality, experience of learning, and personal learning style all affect how much individual learners benefit. Some learners may dominate, others may be passive. One way around this is by assigning roles and responsibilities to each group member. Everyone can participate to an even amount. It may take longer to organise. Setting up groups requires careful planning to make sure that learners meet the learning objectives. With young learners particularly, you can break tasks down into smaller steps so that groups are more or less in sync as they do the task. There may not be enough space and it may be disruptive. Your classroom may be too small or you may not have the right furniture. Teachers need to be creative in how they plan for learners to collaborate and interact. Some groups will be fast and others will be slow. Since this is inevitable, you should plan extension tasks to deal with faster finishers. Ideally, these tasks should be easy to set up, have the same learning objectives as the main task, and require little support and feedback from you, the teacher. How can you group learners? Later we're going to look at moving the furniture, but the trick is really to plan in advance. This will minimize confusion and time wasting during your lessons, and you can group learners in many ways. For example, according to the seating arrangements. You can assign numbers and then group them by that number. You can group them randomly using playing cards, name cards, age, height, etc. You can ask learners to choose their own groups. Or you can group them by ability or mixed ability. Individual study. In a sense, we all learn individually. It can benefit learners to have times for quiet individual learning in the classroom. Individual study provides learners with the opportunity to work on their own with less distraction. Deep work, as it's often known. They can work at their own pace and rely on their own resources. They can think and plan what to say or how to answer a question. They can subsequently discuss with another pair to talk and share their ideas. And during individual study sessions, they can memorize new language and concepts. It's typical for all learners to work on the same task simultaneously, but this isn't necessarily so. Learners can individually complete a variety of tasks and then move directly into pairs or groups to pool information, negotiate, discuss, or achieve some other communicative objective. As for the advantages, well, individual study suits individual learning style and pace. You should set an overall time limit, but different learners will work through the activity at the pace that is right for them. It can be less stressful than whole class work or groups. Some learners can be shy or less willing to speak out or ask questions in larger groupings. It's peaceful and it provides quiet time. Moments of calm, reflective learning are important. Learners of all ages benefit from having a period of quiet self-study. Teachers can deal with individual problems. If you remember the 8 roles from Jeremy Harmer, individual study will naturally lead us to take the roles of prompter, resource, and tutor. We can help learners individually while they are on task. And of course, individual study supports learning autonomy, promoting qualities such as perseverance, knowing to get help and support when needed, exercising choice, and practicing self-reliance. Disadvantages. It doesn't promote much team spirit, and too much individual study does not create a positive group dynamic. It may not be motivating either. Too much time spent on individual study denies learners plentiful opportunities to use language and enjoy the experience of learning together. After all, a language classroom is partly a social construct. It does not benefit communication. Quiet writing may have a communicative outcome, but it's only one skill that learners need to develop. Speaking, listening, learning together are better developed through pair, group, and whole class work. And of course, some will finish more quickly than others. Dealing effectively with fast finishers requires teachers to plan those extension activities. As we said before, these should be simple to set up, easy to manage, and that they won't require extensive monitoring or feedback. You should plan extension steps to keep learners on task, engaged in the lesson, and what they can enjoy doing. Now let's look at two other patterns, the conveyor belt and mingling. Whole class work tends to involve learners working in lockstep under the direction of the teacher. Very often, everyone is working on the same task at the same time. But there are ways to tweak whole group interaction to increase opportunities for interaction and engagement. The first one we're looking at is the conveyor belt. You can use this for many speaking activities, such as A-B pair communication activities or dialogue work. To do this, have learners form two long lines facing each other. They can stand or sit. They work with the person directly opposite them. When they've completed the speaking task, they move one person from the end of the line to the beginning of the same line. This means everybody works with everybody in the whole group. You can walk up and down the middle of the two rows or along the sides to check that they're on task and to feed in feedback and help with language. This type of interaction pattern can be easy to set up, and it gives learners the chance to work with everyone in the group. It will maximize opportunities for interaction, increasing student talking time, and it means learners can repeat the speaking task over and over again, which helps them develop both confidence and fluency. Now let's look at mingling. Mingling is when learners work and interact together by standing up and moving around the room freely. They can interact with the whole group, one-to-one. It's commonly used for activities where learners need to find someone who has a particular piece of information to share or an experience. It can be used for interviews, for team building activities, and other activities which are more social in nature. It can also be used for role plays. You can role play a birthday party or some other form of social gathering. It can help to provide a checklist of questions to answer or a list of information to collect. For example, you can ask learners to find someone who has been to a particular country or who's had a particular experience. Depending on age, social skills, and personality types, some learners don't enjoy or benefit from this type of interaction pattern. From my experience, younger learners benefit less unless you provide a task that's much more concrete in outcome. But when it's used for the clear purpose and with clear guidelines and timing, mingling activities can be fun and they can lead to a lot of speaking. So we've looked at a variety of very common interaction patterns. We've thought about what they're useful for and some of the advantages and disadvantages of each type. Now let's turn our attention to seating arrangements. The way you organize the physical space will have an impact on the type and amount of interaction that takes place in your lessons. Teachers arrange the classroom to foster interaction, learning autonomy, and to suit different learning styles and activity types. Arranging classroom furniture and organizing the physical space generally help to create optimal conditions for learning. In many young learner classrooms, for example, teachers establish learning stations or zones. These can be for shared storytelling, table-based work, often called table time, physical play, or creative project work. Not all of us have the opportunity to arrange learners in different ways. The main thing is to experiment and try different configurations according to your context. You're going to look at 4 diagrams of different seating arrangements. The arrangements are very common in many classrooms. As you look at each one, pause the video and make a sketch of the configuration. Are there any other configurations you've used or that you've seen in other classrooms? As you move through each one, make a note about the advantages and disadvantages of the various arrangements in your teaching context. Think about how you could set each seating arrangement up for a class that you teach. And think about how you or the learners move the furniture. How can you make it as smooth and efficient as possible, minimizing disruption and maximizing time on task? Remember, pause the video at each arrangement and then click Continue to move on to the next. Let's look at seating arrangement 1. Now let's look at seating arrangement 2. Now let's look at seating arrangement 3. Now let's look at seating arrangement 4. How can you vary interaction patterns? Different classroom configurations help create the right conditions for effective learning, but there are many ways to provide a wide variety of interaction patterns without moving the furniture or asking learners to move around a lot. This diagram shows an arrangement of desks or tables within a classroom. Here's one example of how to create a variety of interactions. The arrows indicate the direction of the interaction. In a sense, we're looking at pairs. Learners can simply interact with the person who is opposite facing them. This requires very little effort and fuss to set up. Here's your final task. You're going to think about ways that you can organize learners without moving the furniture. We've just seen one example. So pause the video, look at the diagram below, and draw arrows and make notes of the different ways that learners can easily move between whole, group, pair, and individual work. Think about a specific group of learners that you know. What instructions or training would you give those learners to make these transitions smooth and efficient? When you're ready, click Continue to take a look at some further examples. Compare your ideas with these and be prepared to discuss them with your group later. These configurations organize learners to maximize opportunities for interaction. In this example, we've simply moved the arrows around so that the learners are now working with the opposite table. Here's another example. Here, we've grouped each block of 4 tables as one unit, and learners will interact with the person diagonally opposite. This offers a lot of opportunities for crisscross communication and interaction. And here's one more. In this time, we're still thinking of each 4 tables as one unit, but the interaction happens in a circular way with people moving fluidly between different ways of interacting with their partners, either facing them or opposite them. Summing up. In this section, you looked in more detail at how to skillfully manage your classes, to maximize opportunities for interaction, and to help you create a fully learner-centered environment. We've specifically looked at interaction patterns, whole class, pair work, group work, and individual study. We've looked at moving furniture to arrange different seating. And we've looked at some simple techniques for varying interaction patterns that don't involve moving tables or other furniture. Spend a moment now to review your notes from this whole section. You can go back and check any details. Get ready to share and discuss. In the next activity, you'll meet with your group online. The group discussion is your chance to share ideas, find out what other teachers think, and discuss what you've learned in this input session on classroom management. We've covered a lot of topics. Make a note of any questions, doubts, or insights that you want to share with your group. Think about what you want to ask your tutor and discuss further in your online tutorial. And if you have the chance, try to implement some of the ideas you've learned in your classes. What was the effect on interaction? How effective was your management? And what do you feel you need to work on in your teaching practice? In the coming weeks, we're going to investigate other areas of teaching in more detail. The foundation of a learner-centered and interaction-rich classroom is solid management, and the many techniques that we've covered so far will help you achieve that. Thanks for watching.